Getting a warning in a video game can be kind of the same thing as getting an instruction booklet with an order of furniture. You know it's useful, and that by all means you probably should pay attention to it and learn something by doing so. However, many of us seldom do, at least at first, until we build a chair that looks like it's built for an octopus, or suffer a tragic and entirely avoidable video game death. Still, some of the most fun scenarios you can end up in actually come from ignoring a very helpful piece of advice the game itself gave you, which makes it even harder to think about listening to them in the first place, because you know some absolute shenanigans may await you if you don't. Between rejected robots, giant spiders, and incidents that could destroy your character and save altogether, these warnings are all entirely reasonable, though this only makes it all the funnier that so many of us didn't take a blind bit of notice. With that in mind, I'm Will for WhatCulture, and here are 10 video game warnings you totally ignored. 10. Don't go near deadly life forms. Subnautica. Playing through Subnautica, for many of us, is an expedition where you discover how much more scared of the ocean you are than you've ever really realized. That said, when you get a warning entering the sand dunes that helpfully states, and I quote, detecting multiple Leviathan-class life forms in the region, are you certain whatever you're doing is worth it? While many wiser players were dissuaded by this huge, obvious warning of danger, many of us don't register concepts like the danger of being eaten until it's right in front of us, and thus brazenly stumbled into a hive of hazards. You would think that getting attacked by a Leviathan would feel less awful the 5th time it happens, but as this area can prove for many of us, it's exactly as terrifying every single time. 9. Don't be a diary peeper. Paper Mario, The 1,000-Year Door. Mario is generally found doing good deeds when you can find him. If he's not saving the princess and helping the various worlds he finds himself in, he's restoring power plants, helping his brother Luigi, or kicking back and playing some tennis. Which is why it's decidedly awful that when the plumber/world saver finds Ghost T's diary, a diary that the ghost has asked you to find because they're attached to this world by a fear of someone reading their innermost thoughts and feelings, you get the option to just sit down and have a quick flick through. Mercifully, this huge breach of privacy isn't considered cool, and you're warned when trying to read it that this is a terrible idea. Bypass these warnings 3 times and the ghost will appear as you read the diary and provide a game over that you, honestly, probably deserve. 8. Don't fight GULO. Far Cry 4. In Far Cry 4, your biggest threat tends to be other folk with guns, instead of the wildlife that populates the area. Although, to be fair, we've all had a run-in with a bear or something that proved way harder than it really should have been. So, when you're given the contract to try and kill GULO, an albino honey badger, you might not think much of it. Sure, the locals say he's an unstoppable, immortal killing machine, but that's just because the honey badger is a tough animal, right? Well, wrong. The first big red flag you get in regards to GULO not being any old critter is that, when you take this mission, you get a little round of questioning from the game, just to make sure you really want to go through with it. Because the honey badger is one of the most deadly things you'll fight in the entire game, having already killed off several larger animals, including a human, before you get to it. And when it kills, or nearly kills, you in a single bite, part of you will no doubt think back to those warnings you were given, and mourn over how little you took them seriously. 7. Don't go down there, uninvited. Some games are more subtle than others when giving you a warning, as, while you do need a heads up if you're heading into an area too dangerous for you or that is a point of no return, you don't also want too much spoiled when you're warned to potentially stay away. Uninvited has no such qualms about this, however, as if you go to enter the tunnel under the chapel, the game will helpfully inform you that a giant spider lives down there, and that you'll totally die if you're foolish enough to still want to leap into its lair totally unprepared. That said, it's very, very hard to be told there is a giant spider in a video game without your first surreal instinct being to go and find it. You could literally have arachnophobia, and your ape brain will still potentially say, why not, and launch you into the open maw of a ferocious, gigantic arachnid. 6. Don't help someone out. NIER Automata. If you go and ask anyone who's played NIER Automata a fair amount how many endings the game has, and you'll see the face of a friend slowly fall into abject despair. If you want the answer to that, it's 26. 26! And some of them really take a chunk out of your life expectancy. This is especially true of ending E, where, after completing it, you're told you can sacrifice your save data in order to provide another player who struggles in the final battle to defeat it. Given the fact that there's a decent chance you just had to accept this very help from from another player to get there, it's both emotional to know that someone did that for you and troubling to decide whether you'll pay it forward. This is one endearing time players ignored the warning before them and ignored how much they didn't want to get rid of all their data, nobly sacrificing their game so someone else could get what they got, even if many of us didn't think of the potential ramifications of actually giving up your entire save file. 5. Don't die. MOGEKO Castle. MOGEKO Castle takes an aspect of games that many hate, that is, accidentally getting a bad ending to your playthrough, and makes it borderline impossible to actually get by accident. Because anytime you approach a bad ending, the game will helpfully tell you that you're about to do so, warning you that the thing you're planning to do is literally going to kill you. This makes it feel especially strange if you decide you want to see one of the said gruesome deaths, because not only do you have to intentionally head towards some kind of obvious demise, you also have to tell the game not to worry, and you actually just sort of want to die, just for a little bit. 4. Don't reset. Undertale. By rule of thumb, most people play through Undertale and get the neutral ending, which you sort of have to get the first time around, and then the good pacifist ending, which is by far the nicest, most emotional, and most endearing ending, as well as the canon one, don't at me. The crucial issue here comes from the fact that if you've played through and looked up enough to finish the pacifist ending, you've likely also learned about the bad ending, known as the genocide run, where you kill literally everyone. This requires you to restart the game, undoing all the positive things you did in your good playthrough in order to murder all the friendly faces you just previously became BFFs with. To twist the knife in a little further, if you try and reset after getting the best ending, Flowey will show up and basically ask you very nicely to leave the game on its happy ending, explaining that he doesn't want everyone's peace to be ruined. If you feel attached to any of these characters, you might be better off watching a video of the genocide run, because guilt will come from the very start of your reset if you try and ignore the game's warning. 3. Don't pick Claptrap. Borderlands, the pre-sequel. Now, as anyone who's ever played or even googled Borderlands knows, Claptrap is kind of a dork, to say the least. He's arguably very well-intentioned, but manages to make Wall-E look like Aristotle, because Claptrap is almost incapable of successfully doing anything. As such, when he becomes an option for your playable character in Borderlands the pre-sequel, the game wants you to be very sure about what you're doing and getting yourself into if you pick him. And so, if you try and pick the little yellow robot, you'll get 3 separate confirmation screens you need to go through to lock him in as your character. For context, everyone else gets 1, so this just shows how sure the pre-sequel wants you to be in your terrible decision to pick him. 2. Don't use the remote. Thimbleweed Park. One of the most wonderful things about Thimbleweed Park is that it's a game you literally cannot lose or die in, unless you're really trying, or the character from the prologue. This is because the game is made so you can never accidentally cut yourself off from winning it, which might sound like nothing, but is a surprisingly common occurrence in many point-and-click adventure games. As such, there's only one way to go awry, and that is in the form of the strange device you find in Chuck's workshop. The device also goes by the name of Philip's Dangerous Device, which might serve better to clue you in to the potential this item has. Because if you use it, and it's a point-and-click game, so of course you're going to try and use it, you will be warned that actually, you probably don't want to. If you insist that you do, you'll be treated to the mansion blowing up, because you've just used its self-destruct button. Even if you press this outside of the mansion, which you probably won't because you find it inside, you will still get a game over, as a sort of slap on the wrist for all that property damage. 1. Don't seek Mr. Eaton. Fallen London. While there are a variety of innocuous, if not deeply strange things you can do in Fallen London, players will eventually discover the most dangerous part of the game. This comes from a little questline known as Seeking Mr. Eaton's Name, referring to a god who was devoured and thus exists in a strange sort of state, to say the least. Not only can following this path reduce the skills you've built up to this point, even halving them with some options you take, but it'll also take every item, connection, and good thing you've basically ever gathered, if not downright kill you. The funniest part is that you're warned every step along the way that this is only going to lead to your own downfall, a warning you repeatedly ignore if you decide to follow it anyways. Curiosity killed the cat, indeed. And there you have it, folks, 10 video game warnings you totally ignored. Feel free to drop this video a like if you enjoyed it, and drop me a follow on Twitter at YouSlyDowU. I'm Will for WhatCulture, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.